Welcome to a new edition of Living with Purpose. Today, I have an actress, an artist, a film producer, an entrepreneur, Rashaana Shah, who is going to talk about her journey. She's been in Bollywood. She's now in the US. She has her own media and production company. And she is somebody that is truly taking and combining leadership with film and technology. She's, by the way, also a graduate of computer science. So we have this amazing amalgamation of different talents coming through. So please join me in welcoming Rashaana. Welcome.
Thank you. I've been a big fan of Living with Purpose. I've watched many episodes. I'm very inspired. It's funny, whenever I feel a little low, I come and watch bites of your episodes. And it gives me a lot of inspiration and hope.
You know, that's the whole point, right? So thank you very much. It's very encouraging to hear that our work has a little bit of meaning and brings some joy into people's life. So let's just start off with, Rashaana, where did you grow up, your family, and just the environment that really formed you? So talk a little bit about that.
I grew up in Bhilai, which is now in Chhattisgarh. It's a mining town, iron and steel, and iron ore mines. I literally grew up in the factories where they make steel out of iron ore. And it's a very fascinating process, the metamorphosis of one mineral into something like steel. And steel, the whole revolution of steel industry during early independence days is part of the journey and history of my family. Nothing to do with films, nothing to do with arts. But the men are all trained to be engineers, and the women, unfortunately, are all trained to be housewives. And we were told not to think beyond the point. We were told you have to do everything as what was asked and expected of you as a girl, as a woman. So a lot of my memories are about being back because I'm not following the orders. And my parents, my mothers, I don't know, why are you always behaving like boys? So I think I kind of grew up with my parents extremely frustrated with me. If there were any marching orders for me, and I'd say that has to be for the boys as well, otherwise I'm not going to do it. So I just grew up being in this, that I want gender equity. No matter where, whether it's in the school, whether it's in the house, whether it's in our upbringing, or even choice of education. You know, when I told my father I want to do engineering, it was baffled. He said, we do not have a single engineer woman in our family. And if you're the first one, we will not find a suitable groom for you. And that became a huge problem, a monumental problem. And I think all those fights finally led to my a subconscious understanding that if you ask for something, if you demand something, if you work towards it, you can get it. The biggest challenge thereafter was how to get into the movie industry.
Yeah, but just focus on this, right? Ask. I think this is a very important message for our listeners, that a lot of us actually expect things to come to you versus actually going out and seeking things. And in your case, you asked, and even if the answer was no, you actually asked again till you got what you wanted to, and you worked for it. So the important thing is it's not just about asking, but it's about working. So you grew up in a mining town, right? So this is a steel company town, very different than growing up in a normal city. So life there must have been very different because it's secluded, it's contained, everybody works for that same company. So talk a little bit about how that shaped you.
I mean, it's also a tribal state in India. There is a big discrimination between the poor and rich. There is the whole, back then there was the formation of labor union in India. So I grew up watching the politics of labor union in a young country. India is a young independence. It's not a very old independence. And there was fear. There was a lot of caste discrimination, a lot of scheduled caste untouchables. And I did not understand any of it. I didn't understand why we are all made of the same flesh and blood and what that discrimination meant and how did it even help us in progressing as a society. I think all those things troubled me a lot. Like our helpers in the house had to sit separately, eat out of separate utensils, eat a lower quality food than what I was eating. And they were young working girls just like me. And I think when I saw the whole revolution of labor laws in the country, it was met with furious agitation from the richer class. And all of this kind of has developed and formed my personality and is part of my upbringing. But I do remember my family always saying, don't ask questions. Don't ask so many questions. Stop using this word why. And I think that literally is the foundation of my personality. Is why should I not ask you any questions?
Yeah.
But I did find out very early that our adults do not have all the answers. And they do follow a very ritualistic societal living. And they just run, it's a herd of buffaloes. And I told my mother, I said, you're never going to grow like this because you will never ask, you will never learn anything new. And you will just become a herd. And I don't want to be a herd. But of course, she didn't understand what I was trying to achieve by saying that.
So clearly you have a very strong sense of your own purpose because of the questions that you are asking, the environment that you were growing in. And it's not easy in the environment that you're growing in. But on one side, you talked about you wanted to study engineering, but you also became a professional actor. Were you, as a child, performing and interested in films and acting in school? So talk a little bit about that.
I was a front runner with music and arts and dance specifically. I'm trained in Kathak, Bharatanatyam and Odissi and a lot of local folk dances. India is very rich in about 200 folk dances. And I learned all of them. There is none in my father's side of family. There isn't any music or an art born in their family. Very hardcore mining business people. Money is, we have kachis. So it's like, kachis are the Indian Jews, I think.
Yeah.
Right? And any religion is not, and nothing else. It's hard because everything is quantified that way. Every little thing, what you wear, what you're driving, what you eat, where are you seen, which film. And I do find that whole culture extremely repulsive, honestly. I don't want to be judged on face value. But and I was a front runner with elocution. I had a knack for learning languages. So I speak many Indian dialects from Gujarati, Bengali, Punjabi. I understand at least 15 Indian dialects. And I realized that I never say no when I need to learn something. Even when I started working at the age of 17, any job, anyone needed any help, I would be there, whether it was paid or not paid. I was just very hungry to learn. And I might not be the smartest person walking into the room, but I did want to be the smartest person walking out of that room.
That is such a fantastic piece of sharing. Like, you may not be the smartest person walking into the room, but you want to be the smartest person exiting the room. And that really then shows your ability to be a lifelong learner, somebody that is actually showing up. So here you are doing these multiple things, and then you go into college to study engineering and computer science. Why did you decide that that's what you wanted to do and not go into arts in the first place?
I realized unless I detach from my umbilical cord, from the very close-knit Orthodox family that I am part of, I do not have much chance of understanding and becoming my purpose on this planet. Because I was in a box. I was bred and led and fed in a box. And the only way I could do it was to get into some kind of university. And my choices were either to join medicine in India back then. I'm talking in late 90s. I born in the 90s. Either you become a doctor or an engineer.
Yeah.
Those are my only two options. There was no way my parents were going to allow me to study anything else. But both options were also very difficult. Like my father said, you're never going to find a groom. especially not a touching room, blah, blah, blah. And I told my father, if you are not going to get me, he has to sign my paper. India won't, none of the universities would take me as a student unless my father, not my mother, my father has to sign the document. I had learned blackmail from my parents. I blackmailed them back and very horribly got me. And I hope God doesn't hold that against me, but I did blackmail them horribly to sign the paper and pay for my first year engineering. But my father told me, if you fail even a single semester, I'm pulling you out and I have a line of grooms ready for you to look at and get you married. And that was his only condition. So my purpose was not to become an engineer. I think my purpose was to get out of my comfort zone and find a purpose in the larger game of gimmick of things in India back then.
So you would like to study engineering, which is except for a girl to study engineering, especially from the family that you're coming from. And then from there, you go to Bollywood. How does that happen?
So that is a sheer coincidence. I was in Pune in PICT college, and Pune Institute for Films and Television was the hub. It's was the only education center for cinema. And I started getting offers from there for, we also were growing up in Delhi. We had no means of entertainment. The only entertainment was going to theaters.
Right.
There were we had no arts. There were no parks. There are no installations. There is no other hobbies that is prevailing in that part of the world. So 4 times a week, we are in a theater watching movies. And the only way we think to be part of the whole country of India thinks that the only way you can be part of movies is by becoming an actor. So it just was a default setting that if you want to be in cinemas, in movie business, you have to be an actor. We didn't know who directors, singer, writer, or producers are. We just knew, you have to be an actor. So that led to the passion for acting. Not that I was trained in it, but I started getting work options from the Film Institute in Pune. And I did a couple of students' films, which went on to festivals. And it just by chance, I started getting a lot of praise for my work. And then I started getting offers. And I said, okay. So like an idiot, I packed my bag out of Pune. I finished my engineering, of course. And then I packed my bag. My father said, okay, you finished your engineering. Now you have to get married. I left his house overnight one day. I packed a bag full of clothes and whatever I needed. And I disappeared on my parents. And I left my very comfortable house and my family, and I decided to give myself a shot in Bollywood.
And how did that turn out? Obviously, it turned out well, but here you are.
I stole my father's car, and I knew
I'm nothing so much about you. This is hilarious. Go on.
The only car he had, and back then he had worked very hard to get that car. I remember it was a Premier NE 118. And I learned how to self-drive. And I stole his car. He didn't know I could drive. And then I stole his car and I lived in the car for many, many days. I thought, I was being very smart. I thought that I will, and this is in Bombay. It's absolutely unsafe. I do not advise anyone to do this. But I learned all the addas where you could park the car without the cops troubling you. And I slept in, I forgot to carry a blanket or a quilt. So I would sleep in 3 or 4 pair of clothes inside the car. Then I would go to the Taj Hotel or the Oberoi's to shower and get ready and go for my auditions. That was my life for a couple of months. And I had saved some money I was doing 3 odd jobs back then. And I would do a weekend job because there were no auditions during the weekend. And I would do night jobs. With a company, and I would make some money on the side. I realized I was able to live in 2,500 to 3,000 rupees a month, and free dinners were available through the friends and weddings, which you're never part of. You don't know who they are. And my only expense was some makeup and, fuel cost of the car. That's it.
And did your father find you?
No, he did not find me. He tried very hard. But my plan was the minute I started getting jobs, I'll figure it out and I'll return his car. And I didn't mean to cause too much inconvenience. And I did start getting jobs and I did start making some money. And luckily for me, I had a great spirit, All this was not sad. This was all fun. I was discovering life and people, and then it was too adventurous for me to be sad about it. I have no regrets about it. It was a huge struggle. I didn't know where I would get my next meal. But it's fun, especially back then. And I started getting work. But yeah, I would get work sometimes in the makeup department, sometimes in the scouting department, sometimes in the production department, sometimes as an assistant, sometimes in front of the camera, sometimes behind the camera. I never said no to anything. As long as they would pay me 100 rupees a day. I was ready to go. So I had learned filmmaking, working in different departments, in all departments. I went on to meeting some wonderful people. I have done a lot of odd jobs. I set up a liaison office for B&H Photo Video. As I was helping people, I got more and more opportunities. That's what I mean, if you don't put yourself out there. Back then, my father used to say, the success rate for raising finance was 1 out of 500. You have to meet 500 people in any field, in any business. And I kept that mantra in my mind that I have to go do these many auditions. I have to go meet these many people, and then I might get 1 or 2 odd jobs. But you also have to be the best at that job to lead to other jobs. And one thing led to another. And yeah, I did a couple of films and short films and music videos, and both in front of a camera, behind the camera. I did a lot of television in India. India's first talk show was, a Sony show with Shekhar Suman, and I assisted and worked on that show for a couple of months. And I had India's first woman showrunner back then, Alka Panad, was my boss. And I learned a lot. It was a big changing landscape for women back then. And I'm talking from 2000 to 2005.
So you're establishing yourself in Bollywood. And then what brought you to the US? How did you suddenly decide that that's not what you wanted to do and this is where you were going to be? And then, start your studio. So share a little bit about that.
This is the only sad story. My life is full of fun stories, but this is the only sad story I'll tell you. I clocked, 24 hours, 7 days a week in doing what I was doing in Bollywood for 5 years. And I was very unhappy with the work, with the culture, with people, with the industry itself, and the content that the industry was churning out. I don't think it met any international standards. It was post the era of Rishikesh Mukherjee, Shyam Benegal, Govind Nihalani. It was post all that. There was a lot of crap. It was all about money. It was not about the art. And I sensed that. I will not mention, but I was on a movie set where the producer could afford to drink expensive bottles of wine every night, but they were not feeding 1 cup of tea to their crew. Again, I was back in this culture which I've hated when I was growing up in Bhilai, about the caste discrimination and the disparity of the rich and poor. And of course, every girl, if she gives an opinion and a suggestion on a movie set, was told, you're here to look pretty. I would hear this every single day. Really killed me. And one day, not kidding you, in 2011, I've done a lot of work in Bollywood by now. And I'm really smarter than most people I met. But I'd look in the mirror and I saw a very ugly person in the mirror. Someone I couldn't recognize. I said, who is this person? When did I become this person? And so I quit. I had some money. I took that money, I took a backpack, and I went on a Padyatra, a pilgrim walk to Spain. It's called the Camino Walk.
Yeah, the Camino Walk, yes.
So on a whim, to find myself again, to find my mojo, to find my energy and love for what I was doing, I went on this Camino Walk across Spain. At the end of the walk, you reach the second largest church after Vatican in Santiago. And I deleted all the numbers from my phone. I wiped out everything. I deleted all my emails. I put a hard reboot on my life. And I said, I'm going to repurpose why I started doing this. And that's what brought me to the US and Hollywood.
You are just incredible. I mean, this is just such an incredible story of repurposing yourself and how you actually come alive. So talk a little bit about what this whole work on movies, iconic films, and all of the stuff that you're doing right now.
I knew 2 people in the US. I had 2+1 numbers. And I called those two people and they were both in New York. And I said, you're both somewhere related to and have passion for movie industry. They were somewhere working in Hollywood. I said, I want to come and see if there is a place for me. By that time, I realized that to make meaningful cinema and impactful cinema, you have to first pick up impactful stories. And some research I read in a magazine said 8 out of 10 Oscar nominations are based on books. That kind of stuck with me. And I said, let's do book adaptations. You're in a very known literature, known content. It has boundaries. Your investors will understand what you're making. And it has an inbuilt audience of its pedigree of readers. All of that made sense to me. And I said, let's start from there. So this one person I knew, Kopi, in New York, and said, we both put in some money. And we said, let's go purchase some book options. So we read about 100, 200 books and picked 20. And we just started writing to the letter agents and said, we want to buy this option. We want to make this movie. And they said, who are you people? What experience do you have? My God, the passion we have. And Gopi had the, gab of selling anything to anyone. We convinced them that we have the passion to make this. But we were very clear. We would make stories about real people, real heroes, and something that would vibrate with the West and the East. It was also the changing time in Hollywood, starting from 2010 all the way till COVID, where the shift of Hollywood cinema was happening to Eastern audiences as well. The digital age had come in, Netflix had just come in. It was the first time that a Hollywood film was making 50% revenue from outside of US. That had never happened before. And they were discovering their roots in Europe, in Southeast Asia, and Australia, and New Zealand. And movies were kind of amalgamating across, erasing boundaries, erasing territories, and becoming a true world audience was emerging. So we did a New Christmas, blowing up right now, and we bought book options, Piano Tuna, Purple America, and The Collaborator. I said, all right, let's start with 3-4 films. And I unlearned everything I had learned in Bollywood. And I met every wrong person in Los Angeles and New York who had they were very traditional filmmakers. And, a woman coming from India in trying to understand. In India, they would tell me, you just look pretty here. They would tell me, oh, this is not how we do it in the US. I humored all that. And I said, it's fine. Okay, let's try and do it your way. But if you're not successful, then you do it my way. So I always kind of made it work and turn it around. So now we have produced about 7 films. We're in the process of distributing the movies and released worldwide. There are 2 most difficult aspects of filmmaking. Having an amazing winner script and how will you distribute the film. Everything else is execution.
Right.
You find people, you go make a film, good, bad, ugly, whatever your budget is, it's a bit mathematical in that sense. So once you have an amazing script and once you know how you can distribute film, we can form that conduit. And that's where I met Chaitra and you, Diaspora. And I pitched exactly this concept that this pipeline of films can be set up with investors and telling them that we guarantee you a good product and we guarantee how it will be distributed. That's how we will unrisk your money. And movie business is not a risk business. It is a business with risky people.
People should look up Mulberry Films. You should look up the work that Rashaana is doing. But let me just talk about, why do you believe purpose is important for you?
I grew up with no opportunities or help or resources available to a woman, to a girl. And I decided, I also learned that unless my mother had fought for me, no one else was willing to give it to me. So I realized, I said that as a woman, I have to help women. So every day I have to help at least one girl or a woman to make a difference. And a lot of women came and supported me. And that's how I was able to overcome some of the biggest battles, some of the biggest hills. Being in Hollywood is like climbing Everest in flip-flops.
I love that analogy, though. Climbing Everest in flip-flops. I love it.
And the first film we made after COVID is a wrestling movie. And Chaitra is my executive producer on the film. And she managed to bring a whole army of women investors from the tech world and learned the opportunities because I told them Bollywood is the biggest influencer. Overnight, when you release a film, 2 to 20 million people around the world have access to watch that film.
Right.
Should have a message, which should have a purpose and should make a difference in their lives. And we have that commonality. So I found like-minded women who helped me, and I want to do the same. And I think my only purpose and my medium is Hollywood. But my only purpose is to find a good world and upbringing environment for women on planet Earth.
That's such a noble approach. And again, your journey in itself is so inspiring. And I really hope that this is a journey and your story is really told much more widely so women can actually feel empowered. Girls can feel empowered. That, they can actually apply themselves and make themselves successful and add value to the world. So let's end with your one golden nugget, a piece of wisdom that you want to share with our audience.
This is especially for all the girls across the world. Don't be passive. You have a dream, put it out there, go chase it. Don't let anyone else tell you otherwise. Only you can help yourself.
That's such a wonderful way to end. Again, enter a room with the belief that you know the least. Walk out of the room with knowing the most. I think this is one of the most valuable pieces that I have gained. And always ask, never take no for an answer, and take risks.
Yes.
Rashaana, you have kind of exemplified all of this. Again, to our audience, thank you for listening. Purpose is that renewable source of energy that continues to drive humanity forward. Thank you all very much for tuning in. Until next time, Rashaana, thank you very much.
Thank you.